I think we'll get started now. So, welcome. This is the second part of what's new in Creo 2. There'll probably be a third part after I kind of started going through all the material. It turned into a little bit more than I wanted to try to jam into one little webinar, so we'll see how that goes. But my name's Kevin Leach. I'm the technical director of the customer success team here at PDSVISION. That's my email if you want to reach out at any time and email me. 20 plus years in the PTC environment, from actual design work to training, consulting, mentoring, a little bit of everything. So manufacturing is kind of my background, and it tends to kind of go that way. So PDSVISION, take control of your digital transformation, right? And we talk about the digital transformation all the time, and it's kind of the buzzword that goes around. We all kind of talk about it, but we're really starting to focus in on what does that mean and where does that leave our customers. So for me, like when I go out to a customer and they're using Windchill and Creo, and when I start talking about digital transformation, one of the first questions I ask them is, well, how are you doing your design reviews? And most of them are still doing it the way they were 25 years ago. And that's, oh, we get around the table, we get the drawings out, we mark it up in, red pencil or whatever, and then we'll go back and fix them and update them. And, that's, to me, anytime you break away from that digital thread, you got to kind of focus in on that. So if digital transformation is something that's on your plate, or you've heard the boss is talking about it and you want to know more about it, we can definitely help you and talk a little bit more about it. We're headquartered in Stockholm. We operate in 13 different countries. Trusted advisors of software solutions, not just the PTC products, but a lot of solutions. Our goal is to help you guys, regardless of what that technology is. It's in that manufacturing environment, right? It's to try to help get that value in there, how to get the most out of your software. And like I said, that digital transformation for me is like step one. Today's agenda, if we go back and look at the first webinar we did, we talked about system updates, UI, UX, core modeling, model-based definition, GD&T, advisor, assembly, lattice, Windchill. So we talked about all of these, and I'll just touch on some of those slides as we get going. And then today, we're really going to focus on out-of-date Unite. What does that mean? What is the Unite tool in the first place? Multi-body design, and what are the updates in that? And it's really about sheet metal. So it's kind of, these two are kind of combined together. A little bit about composite design and what that means and how does that all fit into the scope of what you're doing. If we have time, we'll get into welding, schematics, and cabling. But like I said, I believe that's going to be part of a third demo. My goal today is to get through these 4 chunks and enough information to you to at least inspire some questions and then maybe some follow-up. So let's go ahead and get started, right? This is from the first one. We went through the basic core updates. Nothing special here, right? Being able to, it understands that there's already a name in the model tree with the same name. It kind of tells you. It doesn't drop out completely. It used to be that it would open up and then it would just close. It wouldn't give you a chance. Now you can go fix it. No big deal. Model-based definitions were with tables, right? So you could add tables into your model-based definition. And this is another one of those digital thread conversations. How do we get to model-based definition, right? And we can easily help you get there. I've been modeling, like I said, over 20 plus years. And the way I modeled, the way I was taught, was using all real dimensions. It makes model-based definition pretty easy, right? Because I'm already there. I already got the dimensions in there. And even if we're not, as an organization, completely ready to go to model-based definition, I always tell people I kind of start this way anyway, even if I still got to make a drawing, because then it's already done. I'm not duplicating work. I'm just setting up for the future. So that's a big change. And again, if you guys are heading that way and you want some help, reach out. Revision tables, this is all about tables. Again, That was part of the 11 update, the first one. We did a lot of work on our conversation about lattices, Lattice Connect, where it all started, the original lattice, and then the process of how it's grown over the time. And now you can have multiple lattice and you can connect them. These are great tools for specific industries. It doesn't come into everybody's design process, but for those companies that are doing lattice, medical companies that we deal with pretty regularly are doing this on a daily basis. They've done a great job of updating that. Assembly designs, just some different things that they've added along the process. And again, reach out. We can talk about them. The flip tangent constraint is just, it's there now. It wasn't there before, right? Like those kind of things, knowing about it and how to take advantage of the shrink wrap feature, top-down design, all of those simple assembly processes, and then some of the more advanced processes if you need help getting going with that. The ability to get the volume of a assembly very simply, right? Kind of deal with it. Performance report was another big improvement that they added. We have a lot of customers with big giant assemblies that are very slow and struggle with opening them. So this performance report, and I made a point of saying this, that even if you're not ready to go to Creo 11, as the admin, it wouldn't be a bad thing to load a version of Creo 11 just to use the performance report and test your assemblies and try to figure out where the time is being wasted. Is it one part? Is it two parts? Is it a certain kind of parts? Are you bringing in, models from steps or step files or whatever, and they're really slowing down your assembly because they're trying to regenerate all of that. So that performance report we did, and again, you can go back and look at the first webinar. We did a little demo on it as well. But that's a big improvement. That's really something that helps. And we're working ourselves on some tools to really go through a large group of models and look for some bad habit stuff. And again, reach out. We'll have a side conversation about all of that. We might even do a webinar on it coming up. Family table updates, being able to kind of work through some of those map keys, right? They've got some new map keys, even in the one we're going to show today. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Let's kind of go down here. So now when I first did the first webinar, it was on 11.0, but we're now at 11.1. So 11.1 is out July, right? So that's available today. In the past, we used to tell everybody to wait till like the 5th or 6th build code. So if you're an old-time Creo user or Wildfire user, or even back before that, it used to be all about build codes, and now it's all about updates 11, 11.0, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 11.4. By the first one, obviously we never suggest going to 11.0 as a corporate. Maybe test it, but we don't go into production to it. But usually by 11.01, 11.02 for sure, we're ready to go. So keep that in mind. There's references in every new version of Creo. So if you ever want to go and look at Creo 10, what got changed in 10 or what got changed in 9, I actually take this out every time I get a new version and put it in a folder. So I have a what's new Creo 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I can kind of go back and forth sometimes. If a customer asks, hey, I'm using Creo 8, can I do that in this? And then I'll kind of go figure out where they've added or not added. So you can see over here on my side, I've actually copied them over myself. So as an admin or somebody that's trying to keep up with the software, that's not a bad habit. And they're in this folder. So in the common files, if you go to help reference under PMA, US ASCII, it'll have this what's new, just a PDF. It's in every version. I did a little conversation about wind chill road mapping of where it's going. And again, if you want more information on that stuff, this is where we're telling everybody at this point that 13.02 is going to be the long support version. So that's what we're shooting for if you're looking at updating your wind chill. And just a operating sheet reference. Okay. So that was kind of what we had covered over the last webinar, and we're going to start working on some newer stuff. So out of date Unite, what does that mean? That's where we're going to start. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, the Unite tool is a technology that allows us to go, I like this slide better, allows us to go and open up by default, right? So the Unite built in by default, no special license. We can open up CATIA V4, 5, SolidWorks, JT, not JT, but CADS 5, Creo elements. We can open them. But if somebody, import them and open them, and if somebody made a change and dropped a new version of, say you're working with a SolidWorks file, and dropped a new version of that SolidWorks file in your folder, it doesn't automatically update. You actually, without the Unite collaboration tool extension, you have to manually go in there and replace that part. It'll give you a little warning, and that little warning was very easy to miss. So that's kind of what this is all about. We're going to go in and we're going to play around with this little motor, and I'm going to drop a new motor in, and we're going to look at the differences. So they've added a config file that not only gives you the error or the little warning, but actually will tell you that, hey, you're missing a model. It'll act like a missing model. So that's the new part of this. We'll talk a little bit about the license itself. Obviously, if you have the collaboration extension for SolidWorks, for instance, it'll just update that model and off you go, which is the benefit of having that extension. But without it, it used to be tough because it would, somebody put a new model in there, all you get is a little warning. And that's really what we're talking about here today. So we're going to work on this little DC motor NX file, and I have collaboration for SolidWorks and Inventor. I have all those licenses. So I'm going to start Creo without it. I'm going to show the config, and then we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. There's a brand new config file for this version. So it's called INTF3D _ open outdated _ Unite. So actually, the way I find this is I type in Unite and say find now, and it finds it automatically. By default, it's set to yes. And all yes means is it will give you a notification, right? It'll give you a little yellow star, and that's working. It's just that. If we look, you see the little yellow triangle. That's really all it does. Well, what they found was kind of confusing because it's not enough information. And as a user, somebody might have dropped a new one in there, and I might have missed that. Maybe that's a subcomponent. Without these out the yellow little triangle, and it's going to say, hey, that's a missing model. So we'll see how those two work in conjunction. Let me see if I can get back here. Yep, so that's the demo. So out here, and we're going to, I'm going to restart Creo because I have, if I look about, and I look inside here, we can see that I have all those collaboration licenses installed, right? So I have my NX and I have my SolidWorks and all that. So we're going to do this without that. So I'm going to exit, and I've set my Creo start up so I can pick which one to grab. So we're going to grab the Creo Design Essentials, which would be the base license with nothing added. So I'll show that help file here again in a second. And you notice I'm running 11.0.1, right? So I constantly try to keep updated. This is going to take a second because I'm not connected to all my network drives, and I'm using Windows 11. So forgive me for the couple of seconds. We got to sit here and watch that spin a little bit. Again, that's not a Creo thing. That's a Windows 11 thing. All right, so there, like I said, I got some network drives that are not connected. That's why that's not working, but that's all right. If we look at that about Creo system information again, we can see that now I'm running a much lighter license that doesn't have the collaboration tools built in, right? So if I go to options and we go down, and like I said, if I look for that Unite, all I'm going to do is type in find Unite. This is the config.pro, the ability to go search for these things now. and not only in the config.pro, but in your detail file as well, in your drawings, you can now search for stuff that is like, I know a lot of you guys may never have seen it any other way, but it was way tougher in the back. So by default, it's set to yes. So let's start with the default and see what that does, right? So what's new? Let's look at the Unite. And let me set my working directory. And you can see I have the original model and updated model. But if I go to assemblies here, and we have a whole bunch of mixed files in here, right? So I have Creo files, I have SolidWorks files, parts. Unfortunately, is they got the same icon as a regular Creo file because the extension is a .part, right? That's a NX extension. That's the one we're going to actually work on. But let's go ahead and look at assemblies. Open up the shaver top level assembly, right? So here's our shaver. And we want to throw in our NX file. So, again, no special collaboration here, just assemble. And I know it's motor. And it's the DC motor NX. And we can assemble that, right? So no big deal. Come over, grab that surface. And stick it in there, and then maybe that surface. Stick it in there, and then say coincident. And this was funny. This was a question somebody had asked me. They were a little bit aggravated with having to pull down to make this. There is a config.pro to make this your default. If that's something that you find you'd prefer it to automatically default to coincident. That was just recently. Like I said, if that's something that you would like to see or whatever, just send me a quick email. I'll find the config for you and send it out. But there we go. We've got it assembled. Save our assembly here, and then close. Right. So now I'm gonna act like typical. Somebody goes and says, "Hey, we're gonna store on folder." Creo, what's new? And Unite. So we're going to add a new version of this. So I'm just going to take this and say copy. And I'm going to throw it in this directory. And in Windows, it's going to tell me, hey, there's an existing file. Yep, I want to replace it. But what happens is when you replace those, you can see there's this, what they call a wrapper file, and the wrapper file doesn't update. So when I go to open that again, assembly, and grab the top level shaver assembly here. We'll see that it looks exactly the way it was, but I get that little yellow triangle, and that's all it's really doing is it's giving me a warning flag. So by default, without the collaboration license, it doesn't update the model. It doesn't, it gives me a little bit of a warning, and if I'm really paying attention, I'll see that. But if I'm doing this all the time, I might not realize it. Very easily I can miss this and just keep working and not realize things aren't, what they should be. So I would delete this and reassemble the new motor and off I go. Well, that's fine. But I can also, so let's get rid of this. I can also change the way this works without the collaboration license, right? So I can go in here and say, you know what? I don't want that as a company. I think that's a danger, and I'm a little concerned about that. So what I can do is I can go back to that configuration, go to my Unite, and instead of just saying, yeah, that's fine, we're going to actually say no with a warning. And we'll see how this, let me make sure that updated. Yep. All right, so there we go, no with a warning. Say, okay, save my configuration, and done. And now when I open that top level assembly, we'll see we get the message. The assembly contains one or more non-Creo components. right? It'll let me go by, but it's going to act like it's a missing model, and then I got to go replace that model, right? So that's a better, if you don't have the collaboration tools, that's a way better technique. Obviously, if you can get the extension, I'm going to get out of here and start Creo again. And I'm going to do this with my licenses now. Now, unfortunately, I got to hit that folder again. It's going to take a second. So just hang with me. And let's see if I can avoid that wait. Unite. Presets. Select working directory. So I got to do this a little bit more manual just so I don't trigger that wait. So we've done nothing but started it now with the license. All right, so if I go over there now and say options or help, we can see that, obviously I got a bigger license pack and I have the collaboration extension for NX. So now when I do file open and open up that top level assembly, I didn't pick the part I wanted to pick. Assemblies, shave your top level. Now I haven't done anything other than I've added my collaboration extension, and you can see that now the motor has updated. It's a total different motor. It's got cuts and grooves in it, and from where I added it. So that's kind of the difference, and that's the difference between not having the Unite collaboration extension for NX. And the other thing I did was I changed my config option. So if you don't have that collaboration for NX and you're using some of those parts, I personally would go in there and turn on that config. So that's the config is the brand new part for Creo 11. That's all it is. The licensing is the same. But just that's a good overview. That was the best way I could kind of define it. All right, so that's Unite and the new Unite techniques. And that works for SolidWorks the same in any of those that you need the collaboration tool for, CATIA V4 or CATIA V5. All right. And again, now I'm going to hit that button and we're going to sit here and wait. So let's do that, and then I'll jump over back over to my PowerPoint. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a little bit about multi-body update with sheet metal. So I kind of combine these two because it's really that's what it's about. The updates in multi-body are about the sheet metal parts themselves. So there's some new techniques where you can actually build sheet metal design environment now as multi-body support, right? So in the past, if you've done any multi-body work before, you'd start a part, you build some bodies, and then you could convert one of those bodies into sheet metal, and that was it. So that was up to Creo 10. In Creo 11, we can now add multiple sheet metal parts in that multi-body environment, and then see all the flat layouts for each one of those, and do our splits and Boolean extractions and all that. And this was a technique they did for this part. I'm going to open this part up. We'll walk through it and we'll explain how this was built. I'm an old school sheet metal guy. I'm not against this. I mean, really, if you think about the amount of work that would be if it was an assembly and you were trying to build this thing, it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of part files. And then if you have the old way of doing flat states, there would have been each part would be two parts, where this could be one drawing. It could be multiple sheets and one part for the sheet metal assembly, the whole thing, and then one part file for the drawing. So you can really clean up and optimize your techniques here by doing multi-body part. And again, you can have multi thicknesses in those multi-bodies as well, right? Each one has to be consistent, but ultimately, if I have 2 or 3 different piece parts in there, I can have different thicknesses. It starts to kind of work through like a top-down design concept and built around like maybe a solid body as a space clean. Maybe I'm developing the inside shape, And I've got an example of this that I put together myself. It's a little bit different from this one. And this, I'm sure if you went to YouTube, PTC has put one of these out and they've kind of walked through it. So I kind of wanted to put it into context that I understood. I did a lot of Hoffman box style design back in the day by hand, and I'll show you what I've done just to kind of set that up in the demo. So you can also take these and export these out and link them to the parts, right, and unlock them. So that's that can be done. Convert part to sheet metal, convert the default body, secondary bodies conversion, right? So a lot of little techniques that we can do now in that multi-body sheet metal design. Each one of these flat pattern layouts can be, again, done in the single part and then put on a drawing and then specifically grabbed as what you want to see. So really, really kind of cool. Like I said, I put some of my own stuff together here as well. We're going to walk through this single sheet metal part here. So let's go back. At this point, my folder is expanded nicely, so that's nice. Webinar. What's new? And sheet metal, right? Set the working directory. And let's look at their part. So I'm going to just drag that up and talk about multi-bodies, right? So even before I start that, if we just created a single part, if you've not done any multi-body part at all, it's not very complicated, right? What it does is by default, every part that you start now has a single body, right? So if I go in, oh, I didn't mean to hit that. If I go in and I grab and build an extrude, by default, that'll be my first body, right? And there's my chunk, and there's my first body. But the minute I go to add another feature, whether it be a revolve, whether it be an extrude, whether it be a sweep, whatever it is, there's a new body option there, right? So if you've not done any multi-body at all, that's why I'm showing this, I can easily go in here and I can add. So maybe that's going to be a two-sided. Let's go options here. Let's go to the second side variable, right? A two-sided, but you also see I have a new option here called body option. So I can create a new body. So body 2 is going to be that chunk. And what's nice about it is it can be a separate material. It can be different colors, right? So I can go in and say, go in there and say, let's make that second body a different color, right? Just so we can see it stand up. And you can start to see these stack up. And there's also, and if you haven't done it, again, there's also a the ability to grab what they call a design tree, and that'll open up where all the bodies are and what's in those bodies, right? So it allows me to kind of really start to dig down into this secondary multi-body stuff. Now, the problem is in Creo 10, all I could do was take any one of these and convert them to sheet metal, right? And that was it. I could only do one part. And that was fine. That gave me some options to do some things. And I had a nice little demo that I had worked out. But I didn't really see a lot of use for it at the time. But now that we start looking at a part like this, and again, I'll open up that design review, right? So we can see here right now we have 6 bodies. I've only got one with something in it. It's just a planar first wall. But as I start to drag these down, right, we can see that if we expand this, we can see extrude 1 and clamp and all that stuff. We can start to see these starting to get built one chunk at a time. So where is that flat? Well, that's in the B, multi-body B clamp. We'll then use that as a boolean extraction to get rid of the cut there. And you can see that I can really start to build these up and work in context, almost like a top-down design concept, but at a single part level. And again, all the references are all in one part, which is awesome, right? I don't have to deal with any of the assembly type reference information. I can keep working all the way down and keep building. And then if for whatever reason, like, so if I go to, let's see which one that is. So that's the B side insert. If I make that my active part, and then I go over to my flat layout, you'll see that's the flat that I'll get for that, right? And I can do that with each one of them. So if I wanted to look at the clamp, we activate that guy, turn that off. We can then see the clamp come up. So I get to look at the flat layouts of the sheet metal parts. Let's try to turn that off. Oh, I guess I got to just shut it off there. I can look at the flat layouts of those parts as I'm building, right? So again, this is a whole new concept. Now, I'm not a big mirror person. I probably would have done that a little bit different, but that's just me. And then at the end, the remove, right? So that's a very, super complicated part. Multiple pieces of sheet metal all built in, all lined up, everything's tied together. Would have been a top-down design thing. I would have maybe made assembly constraints. I've been fighting with that for a little bit. Then the benefit of that is I could go make a drawing. So one part, go make a drawing of that, and then I can show all of those pieces laid out. So let's say, let me activate one of these. Let's do this one again. All right, so let's activate that. And then go up. And if we expand that, we can see that we can go in here. Just like in sheet metal, we can either create an instance, which is a family table, or we can do it as a rep, right? So if you've come across any of my stuff or have talked to me over the last 2 or 3 years, I was old school sheet metal. So everything I built was a family table and flat instance and all that kind of stuff. And you would add, make your drawing, add the second sheet, add that second model and the flat, and then you'd have two models, right? You'd have the actual sheet metal 3D design, and you would have the flat state of that model. They were two separate models dealt within a family table. So about 2 years ago, this whole being able, or three, I can't remember what version. I'd have to go through my what's new, books to find it. But you can create representations, and it just keeps that within the model. I don't have to make a flat state anymore. I don't have a second model. And in this case, really, what are we talking about? We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if those back ones, the back ones are probably the same. So 3 models minimum. Each one of them with a flat state. Now you got 6 models. You might have 3 separate drawings. I can do that all in one drawing now if I want to. So everything's, just a little bit easier to kind of deal with. So what I did was try to make a little bit of a demo that makes sense to me in what I would do with it. If I was making those sheet metal boxes, you can see I have a template here called sheet metal enclosure template. And this is a template I'm going to drive. So I did some work to this. I designated some dimensions. I made it smart. And basically it is a multi-body part. The first part is my space claim part. So I could, if I just show that one part, we can see that that's just the inside volume of this whole enclosure. And if I went in and said, and looked at my dimensions, you can see that I made this a cab length, cab width, cabinet height, and I can control those, right? So this is my template. So I did that because maybe I build 20 different Hoffman boxes a month, and they're all different sizes, and some are, custom, but it's all being defined by that internal volume. So what I would do, let me make sure everything's out of session here, is I would start a new part. And let's just call this Hoffman Cabinet 1. And I'm not going to use my default template in this case. I'm actually going to go grab that sheet metal enclosure template. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to say, hey, I want to browse for my template in my working directory. And you can see that I've designated those dimensions. So now I can actually say, hey, you know what? The flange length coming back, I only want that to be 1 inch. The height of this, I want it to be 15 inches. The length of this, maybe I want 30 inches, so a little bit smaller. And then the thickness, maybe I want it to be all made out of 089 material, right? And then width, I don't know, let's make it 32 and say, okay. And now what's going to happen is it's going to take this, and as I open up that template, it's automatically going to adjust those dimensions So if we go in here and say, well, let's do this. Let's measure the distance. I think I said 32. Now that I did it, right? 30.25. Let's look at the material thickness. So if we go in there and just go edit, right, we can see that the thickness is 125. The radius is equal to that. But you can see all of my release are set. Everything's kind of organized. Maybe I need to add a round. No big deal. So that's great. I made a quick, I could have built a cover on this, if I wanted a cover, or if I wanted a return flange for a gasket, like I could have built this template up to do all kinds of things, right? Like I just kind of wanted to give the concept to you and kind of go from there. But then the next step to this is, all right, I got the cabinet, now I want a drawing. So then I can say, oh, let's make a drawing. So this is going to be my Hoffman cabinet 1. Again, I built a template, a drawing template to take advantage of this template. And I'm just going to go in and browse for that. And there's in that working directory I'm dealing with, I have a template drawing. Now, obviously, if I was doing this all the time, this would be my regular template folder. But just to kind of give you the concept, you can see how quick now I've got all my dimensions, and it's still modifiable, right? I can still go in and change things and go back to the model and update it and do whatever I want. But I've added one sheet to give me the overall assembly. I could add tables to that. Because in multi-body you can add tables, but there's the first part of that laid out. I could have had all 5 of those sheets, or one for the wrap, 2 for the sides. So I could add the other sheet in here as well to have the sides, and I'd have been done. So I automated my sheet metal process. I did it with a single file. I didn't need an assembly. It updated. It's smart. It's intelligent. I saved myself a bunch of time, right? Like to me, that's really where the power of Creo comes in. To do it old school manual, it's still better than what I did when I first started. When I first started doing sheet metal, we laid this out on a piece of paper and then sketched it and then actually programmed it in a thing called a Pripit, which was a typewriter that punched tape, and then you would take the tape out to the turret press and punch the sheet metal. So from that to this would have been, a couple days worth of work. This was 5 minutes. And I've been talking the whole time and trying to explain it. So really, if I was trying to go fast, I could have probably got it done in half that time, 2.5, 3 minutes. I would have had a part, an assembly, a drawing of both, and done. It's unbelievable. I'm that's the kind of thing that kind of blows me away a little bit. Anyway, that's the update, is that truly, when you go back and look at it, the update is the ability to have multi-body sheet metal parts in one part file. Okay. And I'm going a little deeper in depth in some of these because I like to show a use case for them as I can, as much as I can. Creo subtractive. So this is another one that's kind of close to my heart. I after sheet metal, when I did about 5 years of sheet metal design by hand and kind of got started with Creo, but then I got into NC, 3, 4, and 5 axis milling, mostly 3 axis, but a little bit of 4 and 5. And again, it was very painful. The programs were 2D at best or by hand. And, when you get into 4 axis and 5 axis, I had no shot at it. I'm not that smart, I guess, where these tools are really kind of making your life a lot easier. And the great thing for me is PTC went out and partnered with ModuleWorks back around Creo 5. And the benefit of that is the updates over the last 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, since Creo 5 with the ModuleWorks has been phenomenal. So they've added a lot of automation, high-speed milling extensions, 5-axis geodisc finishing, where to go and kind of work around the part for you. Wall and floor tool pass for the barrels. So if you've not seen that, that's a great high-speed milling technique with the barrel tool. So you can take steeper cuts on the walls and get a smoother finish, not as big a scallop. And now they've added the ability to add high-speed four-axis rotary milling. So four-axis area turning, modernized trajectory enhancements, a bunch of new tools in Creo 11. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. So the new tools in this version is four-axis rotary rough and four-axis rotary finish. This is kind of the one we're going to work through. And again, I've got a nice little presentation that's already kind of saved in here, but basically four-axis rotary roughing and finishing tools, toolpaths that can pass 360 degrees to be used on a screw-type parts applicable in automotive oil field, crankshafts, camshaft, drill heads. Just had a conversation Friday with a company that was looking at doing some of this. They were asking about it, so that's going to be on my this week's agenda for me. Different controls, what tools are supported, right? So this doesn't have the ability yet to do those barrel tools. At some point, they might add that, but right now it's an end mill, ball mill, or bull nose. Subspindle is available when you have both complete machining and high-speed advance. So there's some licensing in here, so don't, it's not out of the base package. These high-speed advanced licenses is what we're going to kind of look at, but if you want to do the subspindle, you need the complete machining as well. That's just a slide of where we're heading, and then there's an actual video of this thing, actually cutting. Well, it's kind of loud. Of taking advantage of that pass, right? So I'm going to do that really quick as part of my demo, but just to show you that there is a video of it as well, of the real thing. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of demo. And subtractive. Rotary milling. Okay, so there's that part. I'm going to drag this up and basically start clean, right? So all I did here was I added my part, added a workpiece around that part, and defined my operation, right? So if we go in there and look, right? So there's my Z is facing out. Nothing special, right? Just simple. If we look at the actual machine tool, right? It's a 5-axis, number of heads, one spindle, right? And I have that complete machining license in there. Main spindle is Z-axis, and then we're going to go and build it. So if we look at the mill tab, we'll see that, again, a lot of new high-speed rough, high-speed rush rough. This is with those barrel tools, auto deburring, high-speed 5-axis rough. These are all coming from the Module Works collaboration. So I'm really, for me, I'm really excited. I appreciate all the work they've done. It's not as, I don't want to say it's defined, but it's not as customized to the level that old Creo NC from 20 years ago was, but it's way quicker, cleaner, faster, and gives great results. So the minute I pick on that 4-axis and grab my Z down there, you can see it. Go up and grab a tool. So this is a 16 millimeter with a 080 radius. It's using that to drive my parameters. So basically it's just using the cut feed is the cutter diameter divided by 80 times spindle speed times 2, the step depth, right? Corner radius. And again, if you're not familiar with Creo NC, you can open up the whole parameter box, look at all the parameters. You can customize this and then save it off, right? So then you can reuse it again and again and again on another different part. So if I'm doing this type of work, well, my guess is they might be different lengths, widths, whatever, grooves, the number of grooves, but ultimately the parameters are going to be the same. I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to save this off once I got it, and I'm going to call it roughing mill mine or whatever. And I'm going to put it in my, my working directory, or if I've got it really organized and I've got a library set up for those to be automatically placed, there's a config option to call for that. So hopefully parameters at this point, people aren't freaked out by them. It's just, it's just basically setting up those typical, even in a profile mill where how many times you want it, or where do you want it to start, helical ramp on or overlap, all that stuff is kind of preset. you save it off into a site file, and then you just bring it up. So anyway, that's that. It defined it by looking at the tool that I picked. And if we go ahead and just run it right out of the box, we'll see that it automatically is ready to go, right? So it's doing all that work. And I might go, you know what? I don't really want it to be in these slots. I just want to focus around the two piece parts there. So that's it, easy enough. I can just drag. So we can see these drag handles on here, right? So I can drag. Let's do this first. Let's go to the right side and drag the diameter. So maybe I don't want it to be all the way in. Maybe I want to leave some material. I'm just going to drag that out and say, hey, stop. Leave that kind of a shape, and maybe from there to there, right? And then I might want to go, let's go from here. And instead of going into those slots there, I just want it to go from there. And then so we can see we're not going back into the slots there. We're really just kind of working. And it's a roughing pass. Maybe it's too many steps. Maybe this is maybe this was defined for steel, and all of a sudden I've got a piece of aluminum on there. I can easily go into my parameters, change my step depth there to 1, replay it. So that's with the basic, player, but a lot of times for me, I'd like to see it in a material removal. That's the whole point of putting a workpiece in there, right? If this is grayed out on your NC stuff, it's probably because you don't have a workpiece in there. But if I had my fixture, so I could have added a fixture here to see that, the way to hold this thing is being held. I can go in and predefine this too. This is another one of those that people don't realize. You can save these files. So for instance, if I don't normally change this, but let's say I did like to change this and I wanted to set up some compare thickness stuff, I can preset all of that. I can even go into here and say, you know what? I want to view the target as well. And I can get all of those predefines there, and I can actually save these settings out. So I can save these settings to my working directory. Or again, I can have a library, and or go down to where this module works is loaded. I can overwrite the settings XML file so that they come out this way every single time. So although I'm doing this in the demo, I'm kind of grabbing things and setting things the way I like them. A lot of times I've got that already preset and done. So that's always the advantage. I like the ability of ModuleWorks. This has really come a long way. The nice thing is they're definitely doing a lot of update to it. Each version has come out, has had a big update to it. But I get my quick little view here, and this is one of the new features. This is the rough, but there's also a finish to this. I'm going to speed that up a little bit just because of the time. We can save the stock off after this is done, and then you reuse the stock in my next, my next sequence if I want. I said a lot of work has been done with NC, and it's always funny because I'll hear people talking about this or that, and then so I'll just ask them, well, when was the last time you looked? You know what I mean? Like we looked at this a long time ago. We don't, we chose not to use it. We're doing something else. Or my machinist and programmers are, really stuck to a different flavor of NC programming tool, and the fact that they're allowed to do that in today's environment with the ability to have all of this associativity built into the NC is, to me, unacceptable. It's a tool at the end of the day, and if you take the time, get the tool to work for you, the paybacks with associativity, the time savings. Hey, I changed the part length, or I did this. I don't have to re-export it out. I don't have to re-import it in. I'm a huge advocate of keeping this all native. I was kind of self-taught on the NC side of this, and just been working on all of the new techniques as they come. I'm trying to get this to kind of finish here a little bit. I guess I can just close it. That might be time for me to get a new laptop too. I'm starting to run on my speed's starting to get a little slow. But that's the new roughing tool. And then again, there's a rotary finish tool that's going to take advantage of the last one. I can go down to a smaller tool. So let's go to a 10, look at the parameters and say fine and be off and running. Again, I would do the same thing here. I would have dragged that up, maybe not been inside. Yeah, let me do that first. Maybe not be inside that. And that's the wrong drag handle. So let's undo that and go back to front view. Just drag that down and then do my preview. All right. So there's the finish. So, these things were painstaking in the past. I can't tell you how much time I've spent trying to customize a tool to go around a fourth axis piece part and try to get what I need. So if you have, like I said, if you haven't looked at the Creo NC stuff in a while, reach out. We'll spend some time. It definitely is worth the look. We're running out of time here quicker than I thought. The composite design and manufacturing. And again, we only have about 6 minutes left of this webinar. I'm not going to spend a ton of time. So if you have not looked at this at all, it was brand new in Creo 10. So first released in Creo 10, and it was a niche. It's not even a niche, but a lot of our customers now are building things out of, fiberglass panels or composite material or, a lot of that is starting to move. So PTC invested in this composite design in order to meet that need. So that's what it's always been about. And I tell the sales guys that when I'm working with them and all that, it's all about trying to help the customer stay within one product and get their needs all in place. So in the past, there was no way to do a layout or of the plies and maybe composite or the different materials, core materials and ply materials, and then get a cross section of that and see how it looks and change the overlap and spread them out, and then at the end get a flat layout of that so they can cut the material. And that's what composite design really started doing. And in Creo 11, what they did was they've updated the ability to make the plies, and they worked on some of the draping simulation. So manufacturing flatten at the end is really what we're trying to accomplish. But they've added this zone-based plies, which really simplifies the ply process. The draping process has been updated. You can now pick a different seed surface to kind of drive that flat layout. I've actually used this in material. So one of the customers I work with builds furniture or like chairs and stuff, and they were trying to get the flat layout of a material around the chair, and it's called draping. So we use this tool to kind of do that. So there's a lot of similarities in materials from fabrics and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really running out of time. I apologize. So that's why I said there's probably going to be a part 3 to this. One is going to be to pick up the rest of the composite manufacturing. I'll do some demos of that, live demos. But also, and I'm just kind of going to tick through this a little bit just because I want to show at the end here some more composite cross sections, the flat layouts of these, being able to kind of get that to get a laser projection data file. So this is a standard that's coming available in all the composite world. So we'll come back and revisit this in the next part of this webinar, probably in a month or so. But we're also going to talk a little bit about the ISDX, welding, schematics, and cabling. Ooh, that was a lot. So like I said, I was hoping to get a little bit more deeper into the composite design. And I've got like 2 minutes, so I can actually just open one of them up quickly. Just to maybe not. Oh, that might be the end of our Creo session. So good enough. I'm going to end it there. Like I said, we'll come back and revisit these and and go from there. I thank you for your hour. Have a nice afternoon. Enjoy lunch. If you have questions, like I said, this was my email right in the beginning here in the first one, kevin.leach@pdsvision.com. Feel free to reach out. If you want more of a demo on one specific side or another, let me know. We could definitely work that out. But in the meantime, keep an eye out for what's new in Creo 11 Part 3. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. I'm going to end us there.